The day my sister laughed at me in the lawyer's office was the day I thought I had lost everything. I can still hear it, that laugh. Cold, sharp, cruel. The kind of laugh that comes from someone who thinks they've won. Someone who believes they're untouchable. I sat frozen in my chair while my older sister, Vanessa, leaned back and crossed her legs. The attorney had just finished reading our late grandmother's will. And according to that document, Vanessa inherited nearly everything. The family home, the investment accounts, the lake property, the antique collection, even grandma's jewelry. Everything. I received one thing. A small wooden box. That's it. A box. No money. No property. No inheritance. Nothing. Vanessa stared directly at me, then smiled. Well, she said, barely hiding her satisfaction. I guess Grandma knew who deserved it. The words hit harder than any slap. The attorney looked uncomfortable. I looked down at the wooden box sitting in front of me. It wasn't even valuable. Just old. Plain. Forgettable. And suddenly, 30 years of family history came crashing down around me. Because Grandma Eleanor and I had been close. Very close. I visited every weekend. Called her daily. Took her to doctor's appointments. Helped after Grandpa died. Spent holidays with her. Vanessa rarely visited. Sometimes months passed without a single phone call. Yet somehow she inherited everything. None of it made sense. The attorney cleared his throat. Miss Harper, there are additional documents if you'd like copies. Vanessa immediately stood. I'll take everything. Of course she would. She always took everything. Growing up, Vanessa was the golden child. The beautiful one. The popular one. The one everyone admired. I was the quiet younger sister. The reliable one. The forgotten one. And somehow, even after Grandma's death, that hadn't changed. Outside the office, Vanessa stopped beside her luxury SUV. The same SUV Grandma had helped her buy years ago. She looked at me holding the wooden box. Then laughed again. You actually thought she'd leave you something. I didn't answer. Because if I opened my mouth, I might cry. And I refused to give her that satisfaction. She smirked. Maybe next lifetime. Then she drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, holding the only thing Grandma had supposedly wanted me to have. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the box. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The silence felt overwhelming. My husband, David, sat beside me on the couch. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, he asked, "Are you going to open it?" I looked down. The box wasn't locked. Just old. Its corners were worn smooth by time. Slowly, I lifted the lid. Inside was a single letter. Nothing else. No jewelry. No cash. No hidden treasure. Just a folded letter. My heart sank. Even more disappointment. I unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was unmistakable. Grandma's. The first line immediately brought tears to my eyes. My dearest Olivia. I stopped reading. For a moment, I couldn't continue, because suddenly she felt alive again. Her voice echoed inside my mind. Her warmth. Her kindness. Her laugh. David squeezed my hand. I took a breath and kept reading. If you're reading this, then things happened exactly as I feared they might. I frowned. Feared? What did that mean? The next sentence made my stomach tighten. Do not trust appearances. I read it twice. Then 3 times. What appearances? The letter continued. There are truths hidden within this family that Vanessa does not know. My pulse quickened. I looked at David. He looked just as confused. I continued reading. I could not explain everything here. Too many eyes would be watching. Now my heart was racing. What was Grandma talking about? The next line changed everything. Inside this box is the key to finding the truth. I immediately looked inside. Nothing. The box was empty. Completely empty. I turned it upside down. Shook it. Nothing fell out. David frowned. Maybe there's a hidden compartment. For the first time all day, I felt a spark of curiosity. We examined every inch of the box. Eventually, David noticed something unusual. The bottom felt thicker than it should. Carefully, he pressed one corner. A small wooden panel shifted. My breath caught. There really was a hidden compartment. Inside sat a tiny brass key, no larger than my thumb. I stared at it, completely stunned. Grandma had hidden it. Intentionally. The letter suddenly made sense. I continued reading. Take the key to Howard and Associates. Ask for Mr. Reynolds. Trust no one else. David and I exchanged a look. Neither of us had ever heard of Howard and Associates. The letter ended with one final sentence. A sentence that kept me awake all night. The truth belongs to you, Olivia. Don't let them steal it.
Them.
Not her.
Them.
Plural. Meaning Grandma hadn't only been worried about Vanessa. She had been worried about others too. The next morning, I drove across Chicago searching for Howard and Associates. The address led to a small law office downtown. An older receptionist greeted me. When I mentioned the letter and the key, her entire expression changed. She immediately disappeared into a back office. A few moments later, an elderly attorney appeared.
Tall.
Gray-haired. Professional. Olivia Harper? I nodded.
His eyes softened.
I've been expecting you. A chill ran through me. Expecting me?
How?
He invited me into his office, then carefully placed a folder on the desk. The folder looked old. Very old. Mr. Reynolds stared at the brass key, then smiled sadly. Eleanor always planned ahead. My grandmother. Again. Always one step ahead. I sat down slowly. What is this? Mr. Reynolds took a deep breath, then unlocked a cabinet. Inside sat a metal lockbox. He inserted the brass key. The lock clicked open, and what he removed made my heart stop. Property records, bank documents, trust papers, photographs, letters, dozens of them. My hands trembled. What is all this? Mr. Reynolds looked directly into my eyes, then said words that instantly changed my understanding of everything. Your grandmother knew someone was planning to steal your inheritance. The room went silent. My pulse thundered in my ears, because suddenly one terrifying possibility became impossible to ignore. Maybe Vanessa hadn't inherited everything. Maybe she had taken everything. And if that was true, then my grandmother had spent years preparing for this exact moment. I sat frozen in Mr. Reynolds' office. My grandmother knew someone was planning to steal my inheritance. The sentence echoed in my head, over and over. I looked at the stacks of documents spread across the desk. You're saying Vanessa knew? Mr. Reynolds sighed. I believe your grandmother suspected her. Suspected. Not proven. Not yet. Still, my stomach twisted. Because deep down, I already knew my sister was capable of it. For years, Vanessa had treated life like a competition. If someone else succeeded, she needed to succeed more. If someone else received attention, she had to become the center of it. And when Grandma's health began declining, Vanessa suddenly became interested in family finances. At the time, I thought it was concern. Now, I wasn't so sure. Mr. Reynolds opened the first folder. Inside were copies of trust documents, official legal records. Grandma's signature appeared on nearly every page. I carefully reviewed them, then stopped. Something immediately felt wrong. Very wrong. The inheritance listed in the lawyer's office didn't match these documents. Not even close. I looked up. What is this? Mr. Reynolds nodded. The original trust. My heart began pounding. Original. Meaning there was another version. A different version. One I had heard in the lawyer's office. The realization hit me instantly. Someone changed it. I swallowed hard. When Mr. Reynolds opened another file. Approximately 8 months before Eleanor died. 8 months. The timing felt significant. Grandma's health had already been declining then. Hospital visits, medication, fatigue, confusion on bad days. The perfect opportunity for someone dishonest. I stared at the paperwork. According to the original trust, the lake house belonged to me. Half the investment accounts belonged to me. Grandma's antique collection belonged to me. Several family heirlooms belonged to me. Not everything, but far more than a wooden box. Far more than nothing. My hands started shaking. Why wasn't this presented at the will reading? Mr. Reynolds looked uncomfortable because another document replaced it. The room felt smaller, colder, more dangerous. For the first time, this wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about fraud. Then he handed me a photograph. I immediately recognized it.
Grandma.
Vanessa.
And a man I didn't know.
Who's that? A notary. My stomach tightened. The photograph had been taken 6 months before Grandma died. Everyone appeared to be smiling. Normal.
Happy.
Except one detail caught my attention. Grandma looked exhausted.
Weak.
Confused. I pointed at the picture. Why does she look like that? Mr. Reynolds hesitated, then opened another file. Medical records. The date matched. My chest tightened. That was one of Grandma's worst weeks. The medication had affected her memory. Temporarily.
The doctors documented it.
I suddenly understood where this was going.
And I hated it.
The possibility was horrifying. Had Vanessa manipulated Grandma while she was vulnerable? Had she used her illness? Mr. Reynolds carefully chose his next words. Your grandmother became concerned after signing certain paperwork. I frowned. What paperwork? The amended trust. Everything stopped. I stared at him, unable to breathe, because suddenly I understood. Grandma hadn't wanted Vanessa to inherit everything. Someone had convinced her to sign something, or tricked her, or pressured her. And afterward, she regretted it. The hidden key, the hidden letter, the secret lockbox. All of it made sense. Grandma had been trying to leave a trail, trying to protect me, trying to expose the truth. Even after her death, tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money, because she knew. She knew something was wrong, and she tried to warn me. 3 days later, Vanessa called. For the first time since the funeral. I stared at her name on my phone, then answered. Hello. Her voice sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. Olivia. I said nothing. How are you? I almost laughed. After everything? That was her opening line? I'm fine. Good. The silence stretched. Then she casually asked, what happened to the box? My stomach dropped. There it was. The real reason for the call. Not concern. Not grief. The box. I suddenly remembered Grandma's warning. Trust no one else. Including Vanessa. I kept my voice calm. Nothing. Another pause. Then, just a letter? I looked out the window, thinking carefully. Yep. Her relief was immediate, almost impossible to miss. And that told me everything. She knew there was supposed to be something else.
The key.
The evidence. The truth. She just didn't know whether I'd found it. Well, she said awkwardly. Grandma always loved writing letters. I almost laughed. The conversation ended minutes later. The second I hung up, I called Mr. Reynolds. When I explained the call, he became very serious. She asked about the box. Yes. And specifically what was inside. Yes. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then he said, That's not good. My heart raced. What does that mean? It means she knows something. Exactly what I had been thinking. The next week became a blur. More documents surfaced. More inconsistencies appeared. The deeper we looked, the worse things became. Signatures looked unusual. Witness records didn't match. Dates conflicted. Entire sections appeared modified. And then we found something huge. Something neither of us expected. A bank transfer. A massive one. Nearly $400,000. Moved shortly after the amended trust was signed. My stomach twisted. The money had originated from one of Grandma's investment accounts. The destination? An account connected directly to Vanessa. Suddenly, this wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't family drama. It was evidence. Real evidence. The kind lawyers pay attention to. The kind judges pay attention to. The kind that destroys lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in my apartment staring at Grandma's letter. David eventually joined me. What are you thinking? I looked down at the paper. I'm thinking she knew exactly what was happening. He nodded. She did. I wiped away tears. I just wish I had protected her. David squeezed my hand. You are protecting her. I frowned.
How?
By finishing what she started. For the first time, I realized he was right. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was about justice.
For Grandma.
For the truth. For our family. The next morning, everything changed. Because Mr. Reynolds called before sunrise. And the first words out of his mouth made my blood run cold. Olivia, what happened? There was a pause. Then he said, we found a second letter. A second letter. Hidden somewhere nobody had thought to look. And, according to Mr. Reynolds, it directly named the person responsible for everything. I didn't even wait for Mr. Reynolds to finish his sentence. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to his office. The entire trip felt unreal. A second letter. Another message from Grandma. One she had hidden so carefully that nobody had found it for over a year. By the time I arrived, my hands were shaking. Mr. Reynolds was already waiting. The envelope sat on his desk, yellowed with age. My grandmother's handwriting covered the front. Just seeing it made my throat tighten. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he carefully slid it toward me. This was hidden behind a false panel inside a filing cabinet at the lake house. I stared at it. The lake house. One of the properties Vanessa had inherited. Or thought she inherited. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The date caught my attention immediately. 3 months before Grandma died. Far later than the first letter. Which meant this was written after the trust had been changed. After something happened. I began reading. My dearest Olivia, if you are reading this letter, then I was right to be worried. A chill ran down my spine. I kept reading. Someone I love has betrayed me. My stomach dropped. The room felt silent. Heavy. Painful. I do not write this lightly. I prayed I was wrong. Tears filled my eyes. Because I could almost hear her voice.
Heartbroken. Confused.
Disappointed. The next sentence hit me like a truck. Vanessa convinced me to sign documents while I was heavily medicated. I stopped breathing. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't think.
Couldn't speak.
Mr. Reynolds lowered his eyes. As if he already knew how devastating those words were. I forced myself to continue. When I later reviewed the paperwork, I realized important sections had been changed. My hands trembled. Grandma knew. She knew exactly what happened. She wasn't confused. She wasn't imagining things. She knew. The letter continued. When I confronted Vanessa, she denied everything. I closed my eyes. A familiar feeling settled in my chest. Because that was Vanessa. Always deny. Always manipulate. Always make herself the victim. No matter who got hurt. The next paragraph made me physically sick. She told me nobody would believe me because of my health problems. I looked away from the paper. My vision blurred with tears. How could anyone do that? To their own grandmother. To the woman who loved them. To the woman who spent years helping them. But it got worse. Much worse. The final page contained something none of us expected. A confession. Not from Vanessa. From someone else. Attached to the letter was a notarized statement. Signed by the same notary from the photograph. The man who witnessed the amended trust. According to his statement, Vanessa had privately contacted him weeks before the signing. She instructed him not to discuss certain details with Eleanor. She insisted everything had already been explained. At the time, he thought it was normal. Later, he realized something felt wrong. And after Eleanor confronted him, he documented everything. Every conversation. Every request. Every unusual instruction. The statement wasn't absolute proof of fraud. But it was close. Very close. And, combined with everything else, it was devastating. For Vanessa. A week later, our legal team filed a formal challenge. The inheritance case reopened. And suddenly the entire family exploded. Phone calls. Text messages. Accusations. Arguments. Everyone wanted answers. Some relatives supported me. Others supported Vanessa. Years of hidden resentment surfaced overnight. It was chaos. Then Vanessa finally called. I answered. Her voice was ice cold. You reopened the estate? Yes. You've lost your mind. I laughed bitterly. No, Vanessa. You always were jealous. There it was. The same excuse she'd used our entire lives. Jealous. As if questioning fraud was jealousy. As if wanting truth was jealousy. As if protecting Grandma's wishes was jealousy. You manipulated her.
Silence.
Then, you can't prove that. The confidence in her voice unsettled me. Because people only sound that confident when they believe they're protected, when they think nobody knows everything.
Yet.
What she didn't know was that the investigation had expanded. Far beyond inheritance records. The bank transfers. The property changes. The trust amendments. Everything was being reviewed. And investigators were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Very uncomfortable questions. The following month became the hardest period of my life. Legal fees piled up. Stress consumed every day. I barely slept. Some nights I sat alone staring at Grandma's letters, wondering whether any of this was worth it, wondering whether I should walk away. Let Vanessa keep everything.
Move on.
Forget it. Then I'd remember Grandma's words. The truth belongs to you, Olivia. And I kept going. But emotionally, I was falling apart. One afternoon, I broke down completely. In the grocery store. Of all places. I stood beside a display of flowers and suddenly started crying. Not because of inheritance. Not because of money. Because I missed Grandma. I missed her voice. Her advice. Her hugs. The entire case forced me to relive losing her over and over again. David found me sitting in the car afterward.
Silent. Exhausted.
Broken. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he said something simple. Something I'll never forget. You aren't fighting for money. I looked at him. Then what am I fighting for? He smiled softly. The truth. That single word changed everything. Because he was right. The inheritance was never the real issue. The betrayal was. The lies were. The manipulation was. And someone needed to answer for it. 3 weeks later, investigators uncovered something enormous. Something that changed the entire case. A retired banker came forward. He had worked with Grandma's accounts for years. At first, he believed the transfers were legitimate. Then he reviewed old records and discovered several authorization forms had serious inconsistencies. Signatures,
Dates.
witness information. Nothing matched properly. The banker immediately agreed to testify. Now we had Grandma's letters, the notary statement, financial records, bank evidence, witness testimony, and a growing mountain of inconsistencies. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope, real hope, but that hope didn't last long. Because 2 days later, another shocking discovery surfaced. And this one changed everything. Not just the inheritance, not just the money, the entire family history. A secret hidden for over 25 years. A secret Grandma had protected until her dying day. A secret powerful enough to destroy Vanessa's version of reality forever. And when the truth finally came out, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. The secret surfaced less than a month before the court hearing. And when I first heard it, I thought there had to be a mistake. There was simply no way it could be true. I sat across from Mr. Reynolds while he reviewed a stack of newly discovered documents. His expression was unusually serious, almost hesitant, which immediately worried me. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me for several seconds before speaking. "We found records your grandmother never wanted released unless absolutely necessary." My stomach tightened. "What kind of records?" He slowly slid a faded envelope across the desk. "Medical records, birth records, private correspondence, documents more than 25 years old." Then he said something that made my entire world stop. Vanessa knew part of this secret. I stared at him. What secret? He took a deep breath. Vanessa wasn't Eleanor's biological granddaughter. The room went silent. I blinked.
Once. Twice.
Certain I had misunderstood.
What?
Mr. Reynolds opened the file. Years ago, before I was born, my uncle had married a woman who already had a young daughter. That daughter was Vanessa. Grandma Eleanor loved Vanessa and raised her as family. Legally. Emotionally.
Completely.
but biologically, there was no blood relation. I sat frozen. Not because it changed how I viewed Vanessa. Family is family. Blood doesn't determine love. Grandma always treated her equally. The shocking part was what came next. Vanessa had discovered the truth years earlier and hidden it from everyone, including me, including Grandma, until much later. The more records we uncovered, the clearer the picture became. When Vanessa learned she wasn't biologically related, she became obsessed with inheritance. Obsessed with proving she deserved everything. Obsessed with making sure nobody could challenge her position.
Especially me.
The evidence showed she began meeting privately with financial advisors, reviewing estate documents, researching trust modifications. Years before Grandma passed away.
Years.
This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A very long plan. And the worst part? Grandma eventually learned what Vanessa was doing. The final hidden letter explained everything. The last letter. The one nobody knew existed. It had been stored inside a safety deposit box under strict instructions. Released only if legal action became necessary. As I unfolded it, tears immediately filled my eyes. The handwriting was shaky.
Weak.
But unmistakably hers. My dearest Olivia, if this letter has been opened, then the truth must finally be told. My hands trembled. I continued reading. Vanessa learned long ago that she was not related to me by blood. I hoped it would never matter. I hoped love would be enough. I wiped away tears. Instead, fear changed her. The words hurt, because they felt true. Grandma wasn't angry. She was heartbroken. She became afraid that she would lose her place in this family. So she tried to take control of what never belonged to her. The next paragraph shattered me. I forgave her many times. But I could not allow her to destroy our family. I covered my mouth, crying openly now, because even after everything, Grandma still loved her, still tried to understand her, still wanted peace. The final sentence would become the most important piece of evidence in court. My true wishes remain unchanged. Olivia is to receive the inheritance outlined in the original trust.
Signed.
Dated. Witnessed. Legally valid. The moment the letter entered evidence, everything changed.
Completely.
The court hearing began 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Family members, attorneys, financial experts, witnesses, even relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone knew this wasn't simply about money anymore. It was about truth. For hours, evidence was presented. The altered trust, the questionable signatures, the bank transfers, the witness statements, the hidden letters, the notary testimony, the banker testimony, one piece after another. The mountain became impossible to ignore. Then Vanessa took the stand. For the first time in my life, she looked nervous, not confident, not smug, not untouchable, nervous. Her attorney fought hard, very hard, but facts are stubborn things. And facts kept piling up. When confronted with the financial transfers, Vanessa struggled to explain them. When confronted with the trust changes, her story changed repeatedly. When confronted with Grandma's letters, she had no answer at all. The judge listened carefully, patiently, methodically. Then came the ruling. A ruling I had dreamed about for nearly 2 years. The amended trust was declared invalid. The original trust was reinstated. Every property transfer based on the altered documents was reversed. Every inheritance asset was redistributed according to Grandma's actual wishes. The lake house, the investments, the heirlooms, everything, exactly as Grandma intended. For a moment, nobody moved. The room felt frozen. Then I heard someone crying softly behind me. An elderly cousin. She whispered, "Eleanor finally got justice." And suddenly I started crying too. Not because I won. Because Grandma won. The truth won. The lies lost. As people slowly left the courtroom, Vanessa approached me. For the first time in years, there was no arrogance in her eyes. Only exhaustion, regret,
And sadness.
Olivia. I turned. She looked smaller somehow. Broken. I never meant for it to go this far. I stared at her. 1,000 responses ran through my mind. Anger, resentment,
Pain.
but none of them mattered anymore. Finally, I said, "It went this far because you never stopped." Tears filled her eyes. But I couldn't fix what she had broken. Nobody could. Some consequences can't be undone. Months later, life became quiet again. Peaceful. The way Grandma would have wanted. I restored the lake house. Planted new flowers in her favorite garden. Framed her letters. And every Sunday morning, I sat on the porch with coffee and remembered her. Not the court case. Not the inheritance. Her. The woman who taught me kindness, patience,
Strength.
and truth. One afternoon, while organizing old family photographs, I found a picture of Grandma holding both Vanessa and me as children. She was smiling.
Proud. Happy.
For a moment, I simply stared at it. Then I realized something important. The inheritance was never Grandma's greatest gift. The truth was. Because truth survives. Even when people try to bury it. Even when lies seem stronger. Even when justice takes years to arrive. Truth waits. Patiently. Until its moment comes. Vanessa spent years believing she had outsmarted everyone. She stole what wasn't hers. She laughed when I lost everything. She thought she had won. But one hidden letter changed everything. And in the end, she didn't lose because I fought back. She lost because the truth finally caught up with her. She stole my inheritance and laughed at my pain. In the end, the inheritance came back to me, while the truth took everything from her. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Justice After Tears. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in her place? Your support helps us bring more emotional stories of justice, karma, and new beginnings. See you in the next story.